Imagine an AI that doesn't just crunch data, but actually uh, thinks more like a human brain, tackling complex problems by engaging specialized mental muscles. Today, we're taking a deep dive into a groundbreaking development that brings this idea vividly to life.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting stuff.
We're unpacking a new architecture called the Mixture of Cognitive Reasoners, or MICARO for short. And this isn't just another language model you've heard about. It's explicitly designed to mirror the functional specialization we see in the human brain.
That's right. Our deep dive today draws its insights from a truly fascinating research paper titled Mixture of Cognitive Reasoners, Modular Reasoning with Brain-like Specialization by Badir Alkhamisi and his colleagues. We'll be pulling directly from their findings, including the detailed figures and tables that illustrate their work.
And our mission for you is to give you a clear shortcut to understanding this innovative approach, uncovering exactly how it works, why it matters, and what surprising benefits it brings to the table for the future of AI. So, okay, before we get into the nuts and bolts of the AI itself, where did the core inspiration for this brain-like structure actually come from?
Well, the foundational idea comes directly from cognitive neuroscience. It's this powerful concept that human intelligence doesn't come from one giant general purpose brain area, but rather from the intricate interaction of many specialized brain
Okay,
networks.
like different departments doing different jobs.
Exactly. Think of it like your brain having distinct departments, each with its own specific area of expertise, like one for language, another for logical reasoning, one for social understanding, and even one for memory and internal thought. And these networks aren't just randomly active, they consistently light up for particular tasks.
Right, so it's about dedicated circuitry for dedicated jobs. Can you give us a quick snapshot of what some of these human brain networks actually do?
Absolutely. So take the language network, for instance. It's highly specialized, primarily handling linguistic input,
Hmm.
processing words, grammar.
Makes sense.
Then there's what neuroscientists call the multiple demand or MD network. This one engages when you're doing anything cognitively demanding, from problem solving to focused attention, sort of the brain's executive function hub.
Got it.
We also have the theory of mind, or TOM, network, which is crucial for understanding other people's beliefs and intentions, vital for social interaction.
Hmm.
And finally, the default mode network, or DMN. This one's active during, well, internally directed thought, like remembering the past or imagining the future, basically helping us integrate information over longer timescales.
Okay, that's a helpful overview. And if I'm following correctly, the MyCRO model directly mirrors this biological structure by having similar specialized modules.
That's precisely right. The MyCigar model is built with 4 expert modules, and each one is specifically aligned with one of those major human cognitive networks we just discussed. There's a language expert, a logic expert that mirrors the MD network, a social expert mirroring the TOM network, and a world expert which mirrors the DMN. It's a striking parallel.
Okay, this is where it gets really fascinating for me. How do you actually build this kind of brain-like specialized structure into an AI model? It sounds incredibly complex to engineer.
It's quite ingenious, actually. The micro model starts with a pre-trained transformer-based backbone. Think of it as a highly capable existing AI language engine, like a version of Llama or Olmo.
Right, base model.
Exactly. Then, for each layer in that underlying model, they essentially clone the entire processing block multiple times, once for each expert module.
So multiple copies within each layer.
Multiple copies, yeah. After that, a small, lightweight router, essentially a tiny neural network, assigns each piece of incoming information or token to just one of these expert clones based on what that token represents. This is called top one routing, and it's a key design choice.
Why just one?
For computational efficiency mainly, it keeps the active parameters comparable to the original model, which, sets it apart from standard mixture of expert systems where multiple experts might activate.
I see. So how do these modules then develop their specific expertise? It can't just be a random assignment. There must be a method to teach them their roles, right?
Exactly. It's not random at all. It's a precise 3-stage training curriculum that encourages this functional specialization. The first stage is expert pre-training. Here, the individual expert modules are trained first.
Okay.
And this uses a very specific curated data set of just over 3,000 examples. Each example is meticulously crafted to reflect the functional domain of a particular expert.
So tailored data for each one.
tailored data. And crucially, during the stage, the router is fixed, and tokens are deterministically sent to their assigned experts based on predefined labels. This initial exposure is vital for building their foundational skills.
Okay, so they get their basic training in their specialty. And after that initial stage, what happens next to teach them how to work together? How they decide which task to pick up?
Right, that leads us to stage 2, router training. Once the experts have their initial specialization, they're sort of frozen in place, and only the router network is trained.
Ah, so now the traffic controller learns its job.
Exactly. It learns to smartly assign tokens to the most suitable expert, still using that same small curated dataset. They even used a slightly more robust method here initially, letting the router softly consider the top 2 experts, just for robustness, before tightening it down to top 1.
Interesting. So the router learns to be the intelligent traffic controller, and then the entire system gets a full workout.
Precisely. That's stage 3, end-to-end fine-tuning. Finally, the entire model experts and router is fine-tuned on a massive instruction tuning dataset, 2AU3, which contains nearly 1 million examples.
Wow, that's a lot more data.
It is. But what's truly remarkable is that the functional specialization established in those early targeted stages isn't lost during this extensive training. In fact, it's largely preserved and even enhanced.
It sounds like that initial curated data set for stage 1 was incredibly important, even though it was relatively small. How do they even put that together?
Yeah, it seems critical. To build that initial data set, they took 19 existing reasoning data sets that aligned with those non-language cognitive domains, logic, social, world knowledge. From these, they sampled 1,000 examples per data set. Then here's the really clever AI-powered part. OpenAI's O1 model generated step-by-step responses for these examples.
Okay.
And then another model, GQFE4o, was used to pseudo-label each sentence in these responses, assigning it to one of the 4 experts.
So AI helping train AI specialization.
Exactly. It's a meticulous, AI-assisted process that ensured that crucial initial specialization.
So we have this specialized structure. Does it actually translate into observable, meaningful behavior in the AI? Can you actually see the model using these different mental muscles?
That's the critical question, right? And the answer is yes, absolutely. The Micaro models show what the researchers call structured and interpretable routing patterns.
Interpretable routing. What does that mean in practice?
It means that instead of just being a black box, you can actually see which expert module is processing which part of the input. Tokens get assigned to the most relevant expert in a way that makes sense given the task. It aligns with the input's meaning and the cognitive demands, much like, specialized brain networks activate for specific stimuli.
Can you give us some concrete examples? Like, how does the routing look for different tasks?
Certainly. The paper has some great visualizations, figure 3 specifically. There's a clear hierarchical processing structure, which is also kind of like the brain. Early layers in the model, say the first 4, primarily route tokens to the language expert, sort of like initial linguistic processing.
All right, the gateway.
A gateway, yeah. Then deeper layers delegate to the more domain-specific experts. So, for example, on the math benchmark, which is obviously math problems.
Logic expert.
Exactly. The logic expert heavily dominates token routing. But on empathy tasks, the social expert is heavily favored.
Makes sense.
For MMLU humanities, which involves factual and cultural knowledge, the world expert takes over. And interestingly, for math word problems like those in the GSM-8K dataset, it actually draws on both the logic expert for the calculations and the world expert, presumably for tracking the subjects and understanding the scenario described in the problem.
That's fascinating. So it can dynamically use combinations.
Well, remember, it's top 1 routing per token, but different tokens in the same sequence can go to different experts. So the overall processing involves multiple experts engaging as needed for different parts of the problem. You can even see token-level visualizations showing the routing is semantically meaningful. Words related to numbers go to logic, words about people go to social, etc.
Okay, so what does this all mean for performance? Does having these specialized modules actually make the models better at tasks?
Without a doubt. That seems to be the key finding. The proposed Micaro models, which the research refers to as specialized, consistently outperformed two baseline models. And importantly, these baselines were trained on the exact same data, but lacked the specific brain-inspired specialization
What
process.
were the baselines like?
One baseline, called No Experts, was just a standard, fine-tuned model, no modular structure. The other, called General, did have the modular architecture, but it used random expert assignments initially in stage one, so the experts became more general purpose rather than specialized.
Ah, so it's not just about having modules. It's about having meaningfully specialized modules trained in that specific way.
Exactly. That seems to be the crucial difference. On average, across 7 challenging reasoning benchmarks, Table 1 shows this clearly. The specialized models achieve higher scores. What's more, the modular structure allows for interesting performance scaling at inference time, which are actually using the model.
Scaling how?
Well, you can actually remove the least relevant expert for a given task, what they call specialized star, or specialize and sometimes performance improves or stays stable, suggesting that expert wasn't needed.
Huh. Trimming the fat, so to speak.
Sort of. Or you can increase computational power by having the router use top 2 routing at test time, allowing 2 experts per token. They call this specialized double star, or specialized. And for some tasks, this can further improve results.
So you get flexibility.
Flexibility, and it really highlights the tangible advantage of starting with that targeted, brain-inspired specialization.
That's incredibly powerful. So if these modules are so specialized, does that mean we can actually control how the AI thinks or behaves by manipulating them during inference?
Yes, and this is another really compelling aspect. The induced specialization allows for powerful control by selectively ablating, which just means removing or turning off individual expert modules at test time.
So you can basically switch off parts of its brain. What happens?
Exactly. For instance, Figure 4 shows this. If you remove the logic expert, there is a substantial drop in accuracy on numerical reasoning tasks like math and GSM-8K. Makes sense, right?
Really demonstrates its role. Yeah.
But what's particularly interesting, and you touched on this earlier, is that removing the social expert on these same math tasks can actually lead to a slight improvement.
Really? Why would that be?
The thinking is that maybe its influence, its focus on social cues or whatever it learned, is less relevant or potentially even distracting for purely logical tasks. It's almost like, sometimes you need pure focus without the social interpretation layer.
That's a great insight. And for broader, more diverse tasks, what happens then?
For benchmarks like MMLU and BBH, which cover many different subjects, ablating specific experts impacts different types of subtasks, as you'd expect. The world expert removal hits knowledge-based questions, logic removal hits reasoning ones. Though some complex subtasks clearly need contributions from multiple experts working together across the sequence.
Okay. What about the language expert? What happens if you remove that?
Now that is a crucial insight, and it mirrors what we think happens in the human brain. Removing the language expert causes a dramatic performance drop across almost all benchmarks. Performance often plummets to random chance levels.
Wow. So it's fundamental.
Absolutely fundamental. It underscores its importance, likely acting as that initial gateway for understanding the input before the higher level cognitive experts can engage effectively. Very similar to how critical language processing is for most human cognition.
This leads us to a truly fascinating question. Given this brain-like specialization, can we use tools from neuroscience to actually see or verify these specialized modules within the AI itself?
That's right, and they did exactly that. Neuroscientists use techniques called localizer experiments to identify specific brain regions associated with functional networks, like finding the language area by seeing what activates when someone reads.
Okay.
The researchers applied these established neuroscience localizers adapted for the AI to their MyTRO models.
And what did they find? Did it work?
The results are pretty striking, actually. Figure 5 shows this. The language localizer, the test designed to find language areas in the brain, successfully identified units predominantly within the AI's language expert module.
No way.
Yes. And similarly, the multiple demand localizer, the one used to find brain areas involved in cognitive control and reasoning, most selectively highlighted the AI's logic expert.
That's incredible. It sounds like they're seeing an actual verifiable alignment between the AI's internal structure and functional units analogous to those in our own brains.
It really does suggest that. This provides strong evidence that these AI modules aren't just arbitrarily named. They seem to capture distinct cognitive functions that align with their intended specializations. It points towards potentially a shared framework for understanding both biological and artificial cognition, which is a really significant step.
That's mind-blowing.
It is. Though it's worth noting, they mentioned the theory of mind localizer was less effective in this study. They think it might be due to the specific stimuli used in that particular localizer test being less suited or maybe too small compared to the others.
Still, the alignment for language and logic is powerful.
Yeah.
So this raises the big question. Where could this path-breaking research lead us in the future? What are the implications?
Well, there are quite a few exciting avenues. First, the framework itself seems incredibly adaptable. While it was inspired by brain organization, you could potentially apply it to any meaningful partition of expertise. Imagine experts for specific technical domains like medicine or law, or maybe even different natural languages within the same model. The specialization they achieved appears pretty robust. It persists even through that large-scale fine-tuning, which is promising for scaling this up.
So that careful, initial, small data training really sets the stage effectively.
Exactly. The experiments really highlight the immense importance of that small, curated data set in stage one. Even with just, 3,055 samples, it seems critical for shaping effective specialization later on. It makes you wonder if different data mixtures or better curation in stage one could push performance even further.
And beyond just having these experts, could we control them more finely?
That's another direction. Beyond simply turning experts on or off, like with ablation, future work could involve more granular control, maybe biasing the router toward or against certain modules depending on the user's need, or amplifying specific expert activations to influence the style of the AI's response.
Ah, like asking it to be more logical or more empathetic.
Potentially, yes. Allowing for user-defined preferences in its thinking process. And remember the test time scaling, using top 2 routing.
Right, getting more performance by using more experts.
Yeah, the model supports allocating more compute at inference time by having the router select multiple experts per token. Performance did improve with top 2 routing for some models in their tests. But interestingly, they noted that using too many experts might actually dilute the benefits of specialization. So there's a fascinating trade-off there between specialization and breadth.
A balance to strike.
And finally, given that these neuroscience localizers can actually identify these AI experiments, and really exciting future direction is to investigate if the internal representations within these experts align even more closely with actual neural activity patterns measured in human brain networks.
So going deeper than just functional localization.
Exactly. Prior studies have shown some alignment for language models and brain activity related to language. This work opens the door to asking similar questions for other cognitive domains, like reasoning or social cognition. Are the AI's logic representations anything like the brain's logic representations? That's a deep question.
Absolutely. Are there any limitations or, open questions that the researchers themselves identified in their work? They usually mention some caveats.
Yes, they're quite transparent about what remains to be explored. It's still unclear, for example, if these benefits will scale up effectively to much larger models. They tested up to around 1 billion parameters, but what about models with hundreds of billions?
Good point.
Also, could simpler training procedures achieve similar results without the complex 3-stage process? That's another question. Or conversely, would adding even more cognitive domains, more experts, further enhance performance?
Lots to still figure out.
Definitely. And they also mentioned that direct testing against human behavioral benchmarks or direct comparison with neural data from humans performing the same tasks is still an open area for future work.
Well, we've taken quite a deep dive into the mixture of cognitive reasoners, my CRO. It's a truly revolutionary AI architecture, drawing its inspiration directly from the specialized networks of the human brain. This modular approach seems to deliver remarkable gains in interpretability, actually, seeing how it works, plus performance and even controllability. It really shows us a promising path toward more transparent and steerable AI systems.
It really does, and it leads to a fascinating thought. If we can build AI models that organize their thinking in ways that genuinely parallel the human brain's functional specialization, what new insights might we gain? Not just about artificial intelligence, but perhaps about the very nature of human cognition itself.
That's the big question, isn't it? What stands out to you?